Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee-infused conversations. All right, guys, welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and with me, as always, is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I got my coffee here, so as always, I'm good to go.
Good. Me too. It's a hot one today here in Canada, so I'm drinking some iced coffee today. It's
That's probably for the best.
a little Starbucks iced coffee, but it's good.
Nice.
It's good. Gets the job done. So we're back at it, guys, with another interview today. We're interviewing Danielle Adler Kroot officially now. She's a physiotherapist out of Maine, Portland, Maine. She used to work at Boston PT and Wellness and now is currently doing her own thing. She took a step out and opened her own place called Starting Line PT and Performance. So Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing great. And I forgot to mention that you're Runfitdoc on Instagram.
Yes.
I think people sometimes don't know names of people. I know I always refer to people by their Instagram name. So just so you guys know, it's
That's so
Runfitdoc.
true.
I literally met someone yesterday at the race that we're part of this. It's called John Decor Ambassadors, and we had the same shirt on. And he was like, "I think I just started following you." And I was like, "I'm Danielle. I'm Runfitdoc. That's kind of how you know me, I think." And he was like, "Yeah." So
That's hilarious.
go by whatever people know you by, I guess.
I'm still waiting to be like at a Starbucks, and have someone, "Hey, you're the guy from PT Coffee Cast."
One day.
Baby steps.
That would be funny.
So Danielle, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, what's going on, where you're at currently right now?
Absolutely. So I went to school at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. I did my undergraduate degree in exercise science there, and then I stayed there for PT school as well. I actually did their 3+3 program. So I spent a lot of time in Connecticut, and then from there went up to Boston, had 2 different jobs there, and then spent about 5 years in Boston, and now moved further north up to Portland, Maine, and ready to take on some new business adventures, and that's where I'm at.
Cool. So you are like the Runfitdoc. So what led you into the world of running initially?
It kind of just happened. Like it really did just happen. I really hated running to start, to be honest. I started my first PT job and worked with other runners and kind of alluded to the fact that I was like, oh, a half marathon would be cool to do one day. They're like, all right, great. And before I knew it, they found one that we were all going to do as a group. And I was like, oh, okay, crap. I'm committed. I'm in. And then from there, I was honestly hooked. It turned into full marathons, and then more full marathons, and kind of just happened.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I feel like everyone gets roped into their first half marathon by someone else because I ran my first half marathon recently at the beginning of this year because my girlfriend roped me into doing it. So, but once you do it, it is kind of addicting. Like I really actually enjoyed the process of training for it and running the race. So I'll probably run another one at some point, but for now I'm not training exclusively, I guess.
Which one did you do?
I ran the Detroit half marathon. So the one that you could run across the bridge. So like I'm from Windsor, Ontario, like that area. So yeah, so I did that, which was really cool. Like it was fun.
That's awesome. That's one that I absolutely want to do. I've heard really great stuff about it, both the half and the marathon for that.
Yeah, it was really fun.
I am curious because like I heard you say like you kind of like hated running before. And I know like a lot of people like it's not like you're like, yay, I'm running super far. So I'm just curious, like when you're seeing a lot of runners, do they have a certain type of personality? Like, do you see a lot of similar characteristics? And what would
Yes.
those kind of look like?
Yes. Most runners or endurance athletes are very type A personality. So they're very regimented, very, routine. But they're also, once they're in training, they're very dedicated to their training. Like, they often say, like, runners are crazy because they do put their bodies through some crazy stuff, and sometimes don't make the most rational decisions around training, which is kind of where I've found a need to fill that gap and educate them that, yeah, you can do crazy stuff, but you need to make smart decisions leading to those crazy events, to hopefully decrease the chances of injury. But
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of one of the questions we had for you, is like, what were you seeing in terms of like the running population, where you saw like your skills as like a physical therapist being something that could help that population? Like, was there certain things you were seeing that like triggered you to wanting to try to help?
yeah, so I think it started with, honestly, me getting running injuries. Like, as I became a novice runner, I was doing all the wrong things or not the right things or too many things, whatever. And I was getting hurt, and I was like, well, if I'm getting hurt and I'm a PT and I should like know better to avoid these things, then people that aren't healthcare providers, that are runners, that maybe are less informed, then they must be doing similar things that I'm doing. They're probably making similar mistakes. So I was like, okay, there's got to be this gap to fill. That there's a huge like educational gap that's not being fed. There's a lot of things to educate PTs on how to treat runners and how to work with runners, but there's no one actually, well, there's some people, but there's no one educating the runners how to essentially treat themselves, to maybe not have to go to PT for stuff, to nip it before it actually turns into something serious.
So what are some of the common like mistakes that you might see with someone who is thinking about starting to run more seriously, or kind of ramping up their frequency or whatever it is?
So load management is a big issue. And what I mean by that is that they increase their frequency and they increase their mileage way too quickly. So they think like, I'm going to become a runner and I have to run every day. And I'm like, no, you don't. Or I'm going to become a runner and running is the only thing I'm going to do. Like, there's no variability. There's no switching it up. They just think if I run a lot of miles and I do speed work and I just keep running, I'm just going to get better at running and I'll be able to do everything. And granted, that's not the mentality of everyone, but I think with newer runners, they just think the more running I'm doing, that's going to be the end all be all. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But so I think a lot of problems arise because there's just an overload too quickly, and too much too soon.
Yeah, and I know I've on your Instagram page, like, you're putting out like some myths and stuff around running. And one of the things I saw you talk about was strength training, and where strength training fits into a running program. Is this something that you still see that's common, where people are shying away from strength programming, or are runners starting to realize how much of importance it is to like supplement their running with a strength training program?
It's definitely becoming more popular. More and more runners and triathletes are dosing it into their program, but there's still a significant amount that are not. I think we're trying to debunk the whole like bulkiness. So that's less of the reason people aren't doing it. I think it's also people are nervous. People are scared they're going to get hurt. They don't really know what to do. They don't really know where to start. Some don't even belong to gyms because running is essentially like a free sport. So you can put your sneakers on, you can go outside. You don't really need any equipment to become a runner. So I think that's kind of where there's this like missing gap, or they say, oh, I do strength training. And I'm like, okay, what do you do? And they're like, well, I do body weight squats and bridges and clamshells. I'm like, okay, not terrible. But if you've been doing those same 3 exercises for the past year without changing anything or adding resistance, then you're not going to really notice that much strength changes. So I think just reconceptualizing their idea of strength training and how it does need to be periodized to a certain extent. And things need to be changing, not every week, but like in, 4-week blocks or so that the muscles adapt and then change again and adapt, because they'll plateau. And I think runners don't really know that yet. So putting all the pieces to the puzzle together.
Yeah, I think that's key, because one of the things I even realized was like having to, like you're saying, properly periodize it, as well as like supplement it with your running. A lot of times I feel like people might think like, oh, I don't want to be sore for my run, or is this going to affect my running? So like, which if you don't know how to properly program those things for yourself, that could definitely become a problem, right? Where people are going to the gym and they're training and their loads training are too much or too much intensity that they can't go and run the next day, or they're underloading and not getting that adaptation that you're talking about.
Exactly. Yes.
Is there certain like things that you focus on with your athletes in terms of strength training, like unilateral or like certain like key things that you want people to have in a program for running?
Yeah. And I think it depends on what the athlete's experience with strength training is and where they are in their training program. So if they're off season, I'm going to take advantage of trying to expose them to the heavier resistance training. If they're newer to strength training, then I'm going to meet them where they're at. They might stay with, dumbbells or kettlebells for 2 months, and just gradually increasing it before we even get to a trap bar or a barbell or something like that. But the beginning, I would say they're doing a 18-week program for a marathon. I would say the first 2 months, I'm focusing on building their base, building their strength base. So double limb, unilateral, and then as things are getting closer, their mileage is picking up. That's where you can start to dose in some more single leg coordination, that type of stuff. So it's still taxing their nervous system and building on the coordination and the muscle memory. But now it's just a maintenance phase of the strength and more focused on some of those other principles of strength training versus just the heavy stuff, so that they're not pooped by the time that they're doing their longer mileage runs.
Cool. So you've run a lot of races yourself. You've also helped the one and only Zach Gabor run a half marathon. So if I was to say to you, I don't run very much, but if I was to say to you, I want to run like 10K at some point, I want to go 10K, like what would be some simple advice you would say to me just getting started?
I would say keep it simple. Less is more. And starting with, if you're completely new to running, starting with a run walk program is a great place to start. I think walking gets a bad rap because people are like, oh, I don't want to walk during this race, or like that it doesn't count if I'm doing a run and I have to walk. And I'm like, well, walking is still really beneficial, especially if you're doing it at a faster pace. You're still getting a cardiovascular benefit, and you're allowing your body to that recovery time to be able to start back up on the running piece. But also, while your tissues are adapting to that newer load of running, you're also giving it time to like regroup and then start again. So definitely starting with a walk run program and gradually progressing that.
Right. And there's a lot of things you could do within that walk run sort of thing. Like, that you could play around with, like how fast you're running, how short those kind of intervals are. And then you can kind of like, you get a sense, I think, for how to pace the run and stuff too, even things like that.
Absolutely. And I typically have people work on just finding a comfortable pace that they can maintain for a period of time. So if they're brand new, you're starting with a 1 minute run and a 1 minute walk, and then building from there. So I have people work on their duration and endurance, and maybe the pace will improve over time, but I definitely have them build up their duration, their frequency, how many times a week they're doing it, and then focus on speed. Speed is never the first thing that I have people focus on. Even well-trained athletes that are starting a program with me, they're like, oh, when can I do a track workout? I'm like, let's get just like a base going for the first 4 weeks. Then we can start throwing in some speed work.
Right.
There you go, Will. We're expecting a 10K soon.
I'm going to start tomorrow. Here we go.
Hey, I can write your program.
There you go.
Oh, that'd be good.
I coach remotely.
Are there some common like mechanical errors that people tend to have, or is that a good focus? Or
yes and no. So it's not the only thing that I take into consideration when I am doing run evaluations, but it's definitely a piece to the puzzle. You know, looking at a runner as a whole definitely plays into why they could be experiencing pain and why they've gotten to the point that they've gotten to. So there could be training errors, there can be fueling errors, stress, sleep, etc. But common things that you'll see biomechanically are overstriding, which is when they're reaching too far out in front of them and kind of getting that locked out knee. And then that results in getting this, what I call an aggressive heel strike. So heel striking is not the devil. It gets a bad rep as well. But it's not necessarily bad under certain circumstances and under certain running styles. But if someone is reaching out with that full extension, I want to try and break that habit. The other thing is overstriking. Overstriking is kind of this heavier landing. So getting them to be a little bit lighter on their feet. So from a mechanical standpoint, that's mainly what I'm looking at. There's going to be some other things going on, like if they're rotating too much and over rotating. If you're looking from the frontal view, you might see them crossing midline, like a little bit scissoring. So I'm going to try and give them drills to target that. But the two big ones are overstriding and overstriking.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I feel like that's something that really helped me, was just understanding like being lighter and a little bit shorter strides.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, like how would you help someone be lighter on their feet running? So
I cue very minimally, because if I tell them like do this, your head's gonna explode. And like running's supposed to be like kind of a therapeutic activity for some people, and if I tell them to think about too many things, that totally sucks the fun out of that. So a lot of the ways that I get people to kind of manipulate their strike or their running mechanics is through cadence training or step rate training. So via metronome. There's an app called Run Cadence that Chris Johnson and one of his colleagues has come up with. And what it does is it captures their average cadence, the runner's average cadence, and then it calculates the 2.5 to 10% increase above that. So if someone has a lower cadence, or I notice that they're overstriding, that's kind of the starting line of where I kind of intervene, and I have them start, okay, play your 2.5% on the metronome and try and keep beat with that, and then go from do a week or two of that, then progress from there. And for some people, they might not ever get to their 10% above average, but what the research shows is that even just making an adjustment by increasing it by 5%, it decreases the load at the knee by 20%. So that's just one way that increasing your cadence can make a change. But if you think about it, you're turning your feet over faster, you're taking more steps, less time on each leg. So the cumulative load over, say, a long run is going to be less. So that's kind of how I explain that to people, to kind of get them to understand why I'm making them listen to this. Like, doot, doot, doot. It's annoying, but it works.
It probably also like gets them, like, they learn that cadence to where they'll probably just do it without the cadence. At some point, they'll be able to do it without the cadence being present, right?
Right. So I tell them it's kind of like training wheels on a bike. It's meant to be just a short term. So the research shows that, by doing something for about 6 weeks, that's enough. And if you're doing it consistently, about 2 times a week, then it will start to become a new habit. So you're not going to need to listen to this annoying metronome forever on every single run, but until it starts to become more habitual, then you can kind of do it on your own.
Cool. I really liked how you said you take in consideration like the whole person, and there's more than one factor. One thing I'm sure that comes up a lot is like people are experiencing pain while running. You talked about load management and how that plays a large factor into it. With regards to like pain, when is it that you address it in terms of when is it okay to be training or running with pain, and then when is it where you see it come a little bit to where you have to dial them back or you have to address it specifically?
Yeah. So I typically educate them on a scaling system. It's called the Wilks classification scale, and it has different stages. So stage 1 is they have pain with activity, so with running. And I say, okay, we're here. It's okay. My rule of thumb is 0 to 3 out of 10 pain. We can wiggle with that. That's okay. 4, that's the green light. 4 to 5, yellow light, see how you feel. If we're going into that 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's starting to alter your mechanics, then that's where I'm like, all right, gotta pull the plug, at least for a couple of days, let yourself recover. And then kind of just giving them that range. I like to educate them on, if they get to, I believe it's stage 3, pain where they're, needing to take medication. That might be, I'm mixing up the stages in my head because I'm a little fatigued.
No, that's okay.
But if it's so much so that they need to take medication, then they shouldn't be running. So right. It kind of gets people to understand, like, oh, I took Advil before my run and I got great. And I was like, well, if you needed to take it in order to get your run done, that's not a good thing, because all it's doing is masking the issue. Right. So either the pain is not that bad and you don't need to take the medication in order to do the run, or you're taking the medication and you're not running. So it's like one or the other, not both.
Right. No, that makes sense. We got a guest. We got a new guest.
Yeah, this is these are my nephews here, so they're just gonna say hello quick. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
So Danielle, with regards to the pain thing, are you, and obviously mechanics aren't the only thing driving it. Is that a conversation that you have with people in terms of looking at some of the other factors that might be playing into their pain experience?
Absolutely. Education is huge. I mean, as you guys know, just with PT in general, education is huge, but even with runners and just getting them to understand, like, hey, me telling you to go get orthotics or change your shoes or they want this quick fix. They want an answer, and they don't want to be told that it's because it's something that they might be doing.
For sure.
So it's getting them to understand, like, oh, are you sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night? Did you recently change jobs? Did you just move? Are you running 6 days a week and like 80-mile weeks? Yeah. I don't know. Like, you have to get them to understand that when they're juggling too much.
Yeah.
And getting them to manage that, and getting them to understand that recovery is just as important as the work that they're putting into training, and that their food intake and their refueling playing a role. So getting them to understand all the dynamics of training is, I think, half the battle and almost more important.
That's a good point.
And I feel like that comes back to that point you talk about, like the personalities of runners, what we talked about before, like trying to drill that into people's head might be a little difficult at times.
Oh yeah. It doesn't always happen in one session. Sometimes it takes a couple sessions for them to be like, oh yeah, so I tried this and it's working. I'm like, oh yeah, so weird. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, but
sometimes it takes them to figure. If they feel like they figured it out themselves, then hey, there you go.
Yes,
that's probably better than having you try to tell them all the time.
Yep. Makes my job easier.
Yeah.
Speaking of refueling, we have a section called how we brew it, how you brew it. So where we ask our guests like how they brew their coffee. So how do you brew your coffee?
Depending on the day. So we have a lovely Nespresso machine. So we kind of take the easy way out where there's no grinding, but we get little espresso pods, and it tastes really good for me. I'm no connoisseur, but other days it's Stoke cold brew, which is just in a nice bottle, which tastes lovely. And the good old Starbucks.
Yeah, we're all on a Starbucks kick today. We're all drinking.
I know. So depends on the day, but I definitely am in a cold coffee or espresso drinker. Hot coffee is not my jam.
Hey,
no matter, even if it's winter.
Any coffee's good coffee. Doesn't matter to me. I'll take it in any form. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about your time at Boston PT and Wellness and how that really developed you in your career, and then how that kind of led into you going off on your own and starting your own thing that you're doing currently.
Yeah, absolutely. So Boston PT and Wellness, I love them and I miss them so much. But so I knew Dave. Dave was actually like my first boss ever, even at my first clinic. He was the manager at Mass Sport and Spine, which is where my first job was. I was there for a year and a half. Dave had left, started his own company, and then I had been doing a pretty long commute to that office, and that got old quick, especially when you're living in Boston. You're like, I want to feel like I live in Boston. And I just wanted more time to be able to do stuff. And that's kind of around the time where it piqued my interest to work with runners, but I never got back to the city in time to do anything. I didn't get in time to do run clubs or anything like that. So I was kind of at this, standstill. And then I had reached out to Dave and was like, are you busy yet? Do you need help?
Yeah.
Do
you need me?
Yeah. Do you need me yet? And that's kind of where it all started. I did that part-time for a little bit, and I did home care for a little bit until things picked up even more and my caseload grew. And that's when I went full-time, and it was incredible. I mean, just seeing Dave and how he's built his clinic and the camaraderie that we all had with all the other PTs that he's brought on has been amazing. I mean, I was the first PT to start, and then from there, Zach, and then Sean, and then Steph, and it was just incredible how we all just kind of melded together, and we all learned from each other, and each of us kind of had our own specialty, like subspecialty in a way. And I don't know, it was just such an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's one thing I know. Like I've noticed from afar, like through Instagram, just following Zach and Steph, and even the Boston PT and Wellness page. Like you can just really tell the environment's super positive. You can tell there's good camaraderie between everyone there. Like it just seems like a really good place to go to work and to go to receive care for sure.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I mean, it definitely was an adjustment for me because it's probably maybe 6 to 8 months that it was just Dave and I, and we had this nice little like quiet space, and then he brought on Zach, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I was weary at first. I was like, oh God, this is a lot of personality. Like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah.
And then we became like instant besties, and we were shift mates until I left. And it's crazy. Like, when you're working with great people and they all have something to offer, you're just always learning and you're always collaborating. And I never hesitated to ask anyone that I worked with, like, hey, can you take a peek at this person? Or like, can I throw them on your schedule for a day just so I can get like another perspective? And the patients even would comment on that. They'd be like, oh my God, we love how you work together. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm seeing 4 different PTs. It's like, oh, I'm seeing different PTs because they actually want to work together to get me better. And it wasn't an all the time thing. It was intermittent, and then they'd come back onto my schedule or vice versa. But the patients even picked up on how much we wanted to work together to get people better. And that's just the environment that we created. And it was awesome. Like,
that is awesome. Sounds awesome.
And so, like, obviously, like, Zach started the Level Up initiative at that clinic. So what led you to, like, want to be a part of that initiative?
Everything about it. I mean, he has so many amazing ideas and so much positivity and energy. And I was like, I need in. Like, I want to be a part of this, and I want to be a part of the change. And it kind of happened simultaneously when I knew I was moving too. So it was my way of also staying connected with them. Like, had a sure way that I was like, no, I'm going to still talk to these people, and I'm going to see them, and I have to meet with them. And so I was like, I want in. And he was like, all right, you're on. So
that's awesome.
Cool.
Super, super excited for what's starting. It starts on tomorrow, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys are both in, right?
Yeah, we're fired up about it. We're excited. Yeah, super, super pumped. Let's talk a little bit about that mentor-mentee relationship. I know you were just recently on the Movement Docs podcast, which was awesome. Those guys are awesome. And you talked a little bit about having mentors yourself. What is something that you look for, or what you think is important with that relationship?
I think just good communication is huge. And just kind of having this flexibility to it. Like, the mentors that I've had, besides one remote one that I had with Chris Johnson, which kind of the spin on how I got started with all the running stuff, but he's still someone that I reach out and email or text or something anytime that I have a question. You know, it's not necessarily about always having this like formal mentor that, you know, gives you work or gives you things to look up. Like, it's someone that you trust, that you're like, hey, I could shoot them an email at any point. Yeah. Or I can like email them and say, hey, can we meet for coffee? I have a couple questions. And that was really important for me to have, like, starting up a cash-based business. I was like, okay, I don't have money to do these like really expensive versions of mentoring. How can I use what I have to, you know, get to know the basics of what I need to do to get started? And that's what I tell students. Like, my brother, Tyler, just graduated from Ithaca for PT. And he's like, oh, like, he's in the job searching realm. And he's like, oh, well, what about mentorships? And like, I'm finding out a lot of places have formal mentorships. I'm like, mentoring is what you make of it, honestly. Like, and there's more and more, like, you know, you have to seek them out. Like, at my first job, I worked with maybe 5 or 6 other PTs, and I just kind of latched on to the ones that I liked their style of treating and that were helpful. And I would just ask them questions. Like, I'd ask a lot of questions, and I'd ask them to also look at my patients if I had questions. And you can't be nervous to do that. And you need to just surround yourself in a clinic with just really helpful and collaborative PTs. And I know that doesn't exist everywhere, but you kind of have to make it what you want it to be.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
So continuing on, so you did talk about starting your own cash-based practice. So how is that going? What are some of the things you're experiencing starting that up?
Slow and steady, but I'm trying to be really patient with that. For 5 years, I was used to a full caseload and just going to work, seeing patients, doing notes, coming home. So this is definitely a different schedule for myself. So I almost have to like give myself tasks. So until I have more clients, so that I, kind of continue to push the needle forward to promote myself. I'm brand new. I mean, everyone in Boston knows who I am. Well, not everyone, but people know who I am in Boston. But
Yes.
I'm a completely new face in the Portland atmosphere. So kind of what my goal for August is, at least, is go to run clubs, go to different workout classes, meet other gym owners, meet other PTs, maybe that are in network, so they can still be referral sources. What else? So kind of just networking the crap out of August and just meeting people so that it just starts to get things going.
So that people know, like, if they have an issue, like, they know there's somebody that they can kind of go to in that realm specifically of like runners and everything like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to summarize. I think one of the key things that you're saying too is like, I know, like, even talking about going out and like networking and stuff, and with the mentorship thing, I think a key thing is like you can create these opportunities, and that's something me and Will have started to realize is like you have to go out and create those opportunities yourselves. Like you're not just going to have people that are just going to come to you. Like you're not going to have mentors just be like, hey, I'll mentor you, or you're not just going to have people that are going to come there. You have to go out and like promote yourself or add value to other people so that they're like, oh, okay, this is cool. Like this person's really down to help me. And then they're going to want to come and see you as well. Like, I think that's one thing that we've really realized is like, you can't wait for it to come. You got to just go and create it.
Yeah. And it's funny and you can't be shy about it either. Cause like my husband's like, do you have business cards on you at all times? Like when you're going on a run, like when you're like going to like family part, I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, you have to have them on you at all times. And we were literally at a family party the other day, and we were talking to someone who I had just met, and she's like, oh, do you have a card? And I was like, oh, no, I don't. But I
have an Instagram.
I was like, oh God, that's what he means. Like,
yeah.
So you have to be humble, but also be like, hey, yeah, I'm here. I'm the new girl in town, and this is my card. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I like that. So you mentioned before how if you had asked yourself 5 years ago if you thought you'd be where you are now, you'd call yourself crazy. Yeah. So reflecting back on that process, how do you think you've gotten here? What's led you to this?
I would say just exposing myself to different opportunities and surrounding myself around other people that are trying to just continue to grow and push the needle forward and, not stay complacent in what they're doing. I've seen a lot of people, whether they're in PT or not, that are just like, oh yeah, my work's okay. And I'm like, no. Like, I want to love my job always. Like, yeah, there's hard days. Yeah, there's going to be difficult patients or whatever, in my case, people that I'm coaching that aren't PRing or whatever. There's injuries that come up in the middle of training that I might not be able to help them with, or that there's going to be hiccups. But if you continue to do what you need to do to keep moving up, and it could be moving up in a small way. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to be the top PT or the president of the whatever club, but you're still moving forward. You're not just standing still. You're not moving backwards. And I think that really has helped me. And I think training, honestly, has also given me extra confidence, just seeing what my body's able to do. And I think mentally that the physical training also has helped my mental training. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I've done some really cool stuff. Like, I could be my own boss. Yeah. And, just surrounding myself with other people that are doing the same thing and just continuing to just go.
Awesome. That's great. That's we could probably wrap it up there. I think that's such a great way to go. Actually, one more question before we wrap it up. If you could suggest like us having a conversation with someone else, who would that be? Like, it can be someone that you're, seeing on Instagram, or someone that you know personally, or even if they don't like coffee, it's okay.
I remember listening to your podcasts and being like, I'm going to think of someone before I talk to them, and I'm going to have a person to say.
It's okay if you don't have anyone right now. We can get it from you later.
I would say, honestly, so Dynamics with D. So Danielle Allen, she is the new DA that has kind of she was hired when they knew that I was leaving, and she is phenomenal. She's a new grad. She just graduated from Quinnipiac, and she is badass. And I was kind of the one that told her that when I was leaving that she needed to reach out to Dave and that she had a job waiting for her. She wanted it. And she was awesome. Like, oh my God. But it's like, it gave me so much like joy to like give that to her and say like, okay, even though I'm leaving and like I'm super sad to be leaving, like knowing that she was going to be kind of filling that role was awesome, because she did her internship at Boston PT Wellness and she just melded with everyone phenomenally. Patients loved her, and she's got a good head on her shoulders, and she's going to do some really, really cool stuff. So she's on the up and up for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely have a conversation with her for sure.
Yeah, she's great.
Cool. So if you want to just, let people know where they can find more about you, your Instagram account, your website, go ahead and let everyone know.
Yeah. So Instagram is definitely where I'm at more than Facebook. So at Runfitdoc. My website is still being developed, so it will be startinglinephysicaltherapy.com. In the meantime, I do have runfitdoc.com just to kind of give an idea of some of my coaching packages. And then email is Danielle@startinglinephysicaltherapy.com.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. We really appreciate it. We know you had a busy weekend with running and biking and friends, so we're glad you could carve out some time to talk with us.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. This was a blast.
Glad to have you.
All right. We'll talk to you later, Danielle.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.